Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the fruited plain, and I am delighted to have you with me. On the TV behind me is, or in front of me, I guess I should say, is the Carter funeral. I cannot believe they sang Imagine, the communist anthem, at Jimmy Carter's funeral. After telling us what a great Christian he is, you literally are going to have them sing a song. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. It is communist direct. It's a stupid song, and I think less of people who sing it. And I can't believe he would want it sung at his funeral. Being a man of deep faith, they tell us. Just ridiculous. Nonetheless, we got to talk about California. Y'all, the media has moved into Republicans pounce mode about California. And they've moved into Republicans pounce mode about California because the press has been culpable in covering for the progressives and their terrible policies in California. They can't actually hold power accountable because so much of the press has become about protecting the power of progressives. It's remarkable that they got to go to Republicans pounce mode, and there's so much wrong. If you subscribe, and I hope you do, and it's not behind a paywall, if you text data to 33777, text the word data, D-A-T-A, text it to 33777, and get my morning piece, because I've got all the links in there. It's not my opinion. It's documented. The progressive failures that led to the disaster unfolding before us in California. And there are ample progressive disasters. But the press is culpable because the American press corps falls all over itself to praise progressives every chance they get. They've been lionizing Gavin Newsom. Not a single reporter in America in mainstream media is willing to hold Gavin Newsom and the Democrats of California responsible for what's happening. And when you try to do it, they're like, oh, you're politicizing disaster. You mean like you people did to George Bush during Katrina? The press wanted to hold George W. Bush accountable for Katrina, but God forbid you ever raise a question about Democratic management. And what's happening in California is progressive decadence has led to progressive mismanagement. They could cover it up for a long time with money, but a fire does not care if you are rich or poor. And if you want an example of press cover-up and complicity in this, I'm going to play you this clip. This is a local anchor on Fox 11 in California, and listen to his belittling comment about Rick Caruso, the former mayoral candidate, talking about the fire hydrants being out of water. The firemen do not have water in California. Listen to what happens to this anchor.
Former LA mayoral candidate and real estate developer Rick Caruso criticizing the city's response to the windstorm and fires. He says officials should have been more prepared.
The real issue to me is twofold. We've had decades to go remove the brush in these hills that spreads so quickly. And the second is you got to have water. And my understanding is the reservoir was not refilled in time and in a timely manner to keep the hydrants going. So that's a failure, whether on DWP's part or another city agency. But this is basic stuff. This isn't high science here. And it's all about leadership and management that we're seeing a failure of. And all of these residents are paying the ultimate price for that.
Despite what you have heard from Caruso, no firefighters have told us that they are running out of water.
Despite what you've heard from Rick Caruso, no firefighters have told us they're running out of water. Really? Watch what happens next.
And let's go out to Gigi Graciette. She is live in Pacific Palisades. I know your signal's not the best, but Gigi, what can you tell us?
Well, firefighters have told me they have no water on this block, and you may be able to make out the ember storm that we're in the middle of right now. This house going to be a total loss. They have no water to put on this fire. They are standing by because they're trying to save the home that is next to it.
Surprise, surprise. That snotty reporter, like, no firefighters have told us they're out of water. It was literally in the Los Angeles Times, by the way, that the firefighters had run out of water. But this reporter's like, no one told us, even though Rick Caruso says it. Will that guy be fired? Of course not. Will any reporter in Washington be fired for covering for Joe Biden and claiming he had competence? Of course not. The press at this point is just a protector of progressive privilege and power. It's why no one trusts them anymore. They could have asked questions. Well, one reporter did. There's a punchline to this. Karen Bass was a former congresswoman. She became mayor of Los Angeles. She beat Rick Caruso. Progressives turned out for her. Barack Obama threw his lot with her. She went to Ghana for the inauguration of a leader in Ghana. No one in Los Angeles cares. She cut the budget of the fire department by $17+ million. Diverted over $1 million to DEI initiatives within the fire department. They even sent surplus supplies to Ukraine. Now, pause here. A lot of conservatives want to make a big deal about what they sent to Ukraine. The reality is the equipment they sent to Ukraine is not an issue here. I bring it up because it shows you that all of the causes, DEI, Ukraine, whatever, the supplies they sent to Ukraine, no one in Los Angeles says it matters. It was hoses, it was bandages, it was excess helmets, things like that. None of that stuff is a problem right now. The problem is the DEI stuff where they decided to fire anyone who didn't take the COVID vaccine, among other things, and then a rehire based on DEI. We'll get to that. But first, Karen Bass, she's on her way back from Ghana, and a reporter on the jetway to get on a plane recognizes her. Listen to her lack of responding.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Back up. Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
That's 2 minutes of questioning. She doesn't answer. She just stands there. Here's the punchline. That was an Irish reporter for Sky News who happened to recognize her. It was not a Los Angeles reporter. It was not an American reporter. It was a foreign reporter. Time and time again, the tough questions for Joe Biden have come from the foreign press, not the American press. The American press is too busy on their knees in front of these Democrats, propping them up. The American press corps does not wish to hold progressives accountable. I have the receipts. If you text data to 33777, you can get my morning piece. And I got the receipts of Democratic incompetence in California. And I should begin the way I begun the piece this morning. Let me read you this quote. February was the wettest month in downtown Los Angeles since 1998. With over 12 inches of rain drenching the city, it was the fourth wettest February and the seventh wettest month overall in the city's 150-year recorded history. That's Judson Jones in the New York Times in March of last year, 2024. Less than a year ago, Los Angeles had record-setting rainfall. Today, the fire hydrants in Los Angeles are dry because the reservoir is out of water. California hasn't built a reservoir since 1979. In 2014, this is from the Associated Press, in the middle of a severe drought that would test California's complex water storage system like never before, voters told the state to borrow $7.5 billion and use part of it to build projects to stockpile more water. 7 years later, the drought's come and gone, replaced by an even hotter and drier one that's draining the state's reservoirs at an alarming rate, but none of the more than half dozen water storage projects scheduled to receive the money have been built. That was from 2021. We're now in 2025, and still not a single reservoir has been built that was approved by voters in 2014. In fact, they were supposed to start one in 2024. It's not going to be started until this year, and it won't be finished until 2030. And that's just one reservoir. The fires don't care whether people support these policies or not. I've seen conservatives cheering on that Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, his house is burned down. And I've seen people on the right cheering it on. He gets what he deserves for supporting these progressives. I've also seen what's his name? James, what's his name? Who is a conservative actor in Hollywood, and progressives have been cheering on his house burning down. That's gross. You've broken your humanity if you're looking at this tragedy and you're thinking, ha, they get what they deserve. Over 2 million people in Los Angeles voted for Donald Trump. More than the populations of 15 states voting for Donald Trump. The fire doesn't care whether you supported Trump or Harris. It doesn't care whether you're conservative or progressive. It doesn't care whether you're rich or poor, famous or not. James Wood, thank you, Charlie. James Wood's house burned. Fires don't care. Wishing ill on these people is a sign that you have become poisoned by your politics. But we can recognize the policies that led to this. The mountain brush has been unpruned for 30 years. On December 16, 2024, Richard Schmad wrote in the Washington Examiner that the U.S. Forestry Service had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on DEI workshops while failing to meet federal goals for forest management. The Associated Press from June 2023, quote, federal land managers are scrambling to catch up after falling behind on several of their priority forests for thinning, even as they exceeded goals elsewhere. They've skipped over some high-risk communities to work in less threatened areas. Hindering the Forest Service nationwide is a shortage of workers to cut and remove trees on the scale demanded. Why is there a shortage? Because they decided to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring policies over just hiring competent people quickly. Los Angeles has a shortage of firefighters. Comedian Adam Carolla testified before a legislative hearing that he wanted to be a firefighter, and Los Angeles told him it would take him 7 years to go through the process because he was neither female, black, nor Hispanic. He waited for 7 years. When he finally got called to come in and take the written test, he stood in line with a young black lady behind him. He asked her how long ago she had applied. She said Wednesday. They fired competent firefighters who wouldn't take the COVID shot. In 2022, Los Angeles made a very big deal about turning to diversity. They hired the first female and openly gay fire chief in Los Angeles. They cut the fire department budget last year by $17.6 million, but spent over $1 million last year on a quote-unquote racial equity plan designed to end systemic, institutional, and structural racism within the fire department. They've also regulated fire insurance out of the state. The progressives have. Fire insurance companies can't raise rates in California without government permission. The government won't give them permission. So all the fire insurance people have been abandoning California. So many of these homes that are burning down don't have fire insurance. Environmentalists sued to block Los Angeles County from clearing areas in the hills that they thought might be prone to fire because the environmentalists said it would cause ecological devastation. It has all come together now. The environmentalists didn't want them to cut things down. The Forestry Service couldn't cut anything down because they didn't have the manpower because of DEI requirements for hiring. The fire department is short of firefighters because they fired them over the COVID vaccine, and they've been slow to hire replacements because of DEI regulations. They don't have reservoirs. The fire hydrants are dry because a city by the sea has no access to water because they won't do what they need to do to make sure they have water. Progressive management becomes utopia. And that utopia becomes dystopia. And that dystopia in California has literally created a hell on earth now. These are the policies of progressives, and the press in America has been complicit, refusing to hold power accountable when that power is in the hands of the progressives. They could have asked tough questions, and the only one who's done so is an Irish reporter on a plane ride because he happened to recognize the mayor of California or the mayor of Los Angeles. It took a foreign reporter to ask Karen Bass tough questions, and she had no answers.
Want to be on the show?
Hello. I love your show.
Call Eric now at 877-973-7425.
You really should. And welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, it is cold out there. And you remember, charge your batteries in your radios if you got them, or your phones, because when your power goes out in the storms, you can still get radio for free over the air. Um, you know, it just randomly popped in my head as I'm coming back thinking about all this cold stuff. Um, a lot of people are down on my industry, radio. Oh, it's dying, streaming service, what? You can get radio for free. And also, if you listen to radio as opposed to a podcast, you're getting timely news and information. You're not having to wait for the podcast download, but you get it for free. News and information. Sadly for me in my business, because I want to do a national show and want to be national, it's local radio is actually doing pretty good around the country, and in stations that are willing to invest in local talent. So nonetheless, it was on my mind. When we come back, I want to give you a preview of Donald Trump's executive orders. There's been some writing on it. I've had some conversations with people who know what's coming. The very first day of Donald Trump's presidency is going to be probably more impactful than all 4 years of Joe Biden's. I'll tell you why when we come back. First, I want to tell you about Americans for Prosperity, who have around the country been doing the work of the conservative movement to put points on the board for common sense conservative reforms. All you have to do to sign up is go to americansforprosperity.org. Americansforprosperity.org. You sign up with AFP, and you, my friends, can learn how to be the most effective conservative activists you can be. You'll learn how to make persuasive cases to your local government, your state government, even your next door neighbor on just common sense conservative reforms for free markets, for free people, for families. They support things like school choice. They've been very active in the nation supporting school choice. They've been very active in the nation supporting the rights of parents and common sense immigration solutions to secure the border. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. In 2024, they knocked on more than 10 million doors to get people out to vote. They're really effective, and they'd love to train you as an effective activist. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. I want to give you a little bit of a preview of the executive orders that will be coming from the Trump administration. First, I need to bring you an update to something we talked about yesterday. I had a caller yesterday raised the issue. John Ossoff is one of the two senators from Georgia. And John Ossoff, there was a question about how would he vote on the Laken Riley Act in the Senate. I don't think anybody doubts if he weren't up for reelection, he probably would oppose it, but he has announced that he will support the Laken Riley Act in the Senate. Being on the ballot does something to a man. Raphael Warnock has not taken his position in Georgia. We don't know where Warnock stands on the matter. I would suspect he will oppose it, but we'll see. He'll be up for reelection at some point. We'll see. But Ossoff is going to vote for the Laken Riley Act. That he joins John Fetterman and one other Democrat. The Republicans are close to being able to overcome the filibuster without even having to cut a deal with the Democrats. We'll see. Right now, let me go to the phones, though. Tom, you're going to be up first. Welcome to the show, Tom. How are you? Good. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, look, it is, and no, listen, I understand it, and it I gotta be honest with you, Tom, and everybody. I don't like. It's not my nature. It was raised that it was a bad thing to see politics and everything. I don't like coming on this program while Los Angeles is on fire and casting political blame, but it's so obvious and it's such a tragedy. Yeah, because you could see where this was headed. Like, for example, there have been calls for the last 5 years to begin cleaning the brush up in the Hollywood Hills. And environmentalists said no. It would if it rained, it would cause mudslides if you got rid of the underbrush. Well, the response was, well, if it burns, we're all going to burn down. And guess who won out that argument, unfortunately? It's so painful. Yep. Mm-hmm. It is. It is. Yeah. Look, I'm prayers for your whole family. So, have you talked to your family that's out there? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Uh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it did. Listen, thank you very much for the phone call, Tom. I got let me let you go there, but yeah, so let me. By the way, explain this because I kind of told I was explaining the Santa Ana winds this morning to my team, and I got a little bit of it wrong, and I wanna correct the record to a little degree for them and everyone else. So here's the thing: the Santa Ana winds, what causes them? If you ever look on a map of Los Angeles, it's actually kind of wild to look at. So Los Angeles is, you know how everyone says it's smoky in Los Angeles. The Indians used to call it the Smoke Valley because the air comes out of the mountains to the east and north of LA and flows out to the sea. You have behind the mountains hot desert air. You have a jet stream that comes down from San Francisco down and cuts through the mountains, and you have this really hot, dry desert air that wants to flow to the cool air on the Pacific. Remember, like, let me give you a very brief. We'll get to the executive orders, I promise, but let me give you this very brief geographical explanation. So there's an oscillation of water. You know what the Gulf Stream is? The Gulf Stream is water comes down from the North Sea down the European continent towards the equator, turns clockwise, goes across the Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico, and then a warm current carries it back up the north into the North Atlantic and over to Great Britain. And it works clockwise. The Pacific Ocean is now, you got to imagine where the Pacific Ocean is. The Pacific Ocean works in the same way and has the same oscillation effect. And so cold water comes from Alaska and goes down the Pacific. That's why the Pacific coast water is always colder than the East Coast water in the Atlantic, because in the Atlantic, it's the hot water currents from the Caribbean are going up the coast. And in the Pacific, it's the cold water currents from Alaska are going down. But it's not just the cold water currents going down, it's also the cold air coming down with the jet stream. You know how the jet stream comes down, goes across the country, and then goes up? It works kind of in the same way with that cold water current. So you have hot desert air, and hot air, as you know, wants to go where it's cold and balance everything out. It's not cold that flows to hot. It's hot that flows to cold because hot has energy, cold doesn't. So hot air wants to go to cold. So the hot desert air wants to go to the Pacific. Meanwhile, you have the jet stream that's coming down from the north. And at this time of year, really, it's November, December, January in there, you get these Santa Ana winds where the warm air from the desert comes streaming through the mountain canyons. It meets with the Gulf or with the jet stream coming down south, and it builds in these canyons. So, for example, best example I can think for those of you who are in urban areas, if you go to a downtown area like downtown Atlanta, go to New York or Chicago, where you have really tall buildings, and think about the wind that funnels through those streets. You go to New York City, go to 7th Avenue. The wind just comes barreling down 7th Avenue because it hits those buildings. The wind comes down the buildings and then flows out. And you have this massive, because it's compressed between the buildings, the wind flows. So now you look at a 3D map of the Los Angeles area, you have these canyons and these mountains, and the valleys between point on the north side of Los Angeles, they point south, they go north-south. On the east side of Los Angeles, those valleys go from northeast to southwest and go from east to west. And so all of that air from the jet stream and from the desert air comes funneling through the mountains at this time of year, faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, trying to get to the cold water, trying to bring equilibrium to the atmosphere. That's what happens. So you have these massive winds that come through. Now, add to that the fire. When fires spread dramatically, the fires create their own ecosystem. They create their own wind. They can create their own thunderstorms. They can start fire tornadoes combining with the wind from the heat because the heat is rising rapidly. So you got a tinderbox, you got the Santa Ana winds, and you have the homeless, the uncontrolled spread homeless population of California in the winter building fires to stay warm. Those fires spread the embers. The embers land in the dry area where the environmentalists have said you're not allowed to take up the brush. They start a fire. What happens when you have a little fire? You blow on it, it gets big. The Santa Ana winds are your breath, blowing, fanning the flames. And then what happens? Here's the thing. Remember, you got Los Angeles surrounded to the north and the east by the mountains. The wind is blowing into Los Angeles. So the fires are not spreading out into the desert. They're spreading into the city. And it's devastating. And let me say this again. From the bottom of my heart, grace is when we give people things they don't deserve. When God gives us things we don't deserve, that's grace. Mercy is sparing us from things we do deserve. When God gives us mercy, he spares us from the things that we deserve. There are a lot of people who become so poisoned by politics, they're looking at the situation saying, these people get what they deserve. They voted for these policies. Be a human being and exercise some mercy. Exercise some grace. The politicians have a lot to be accountable for. The people voted for politicians who were supposed to take care of them. The political class has failed. Don't attack the people who are losing everything. Don't attack the people who are victims of Mother Nature. The people who are most poisoned by politics are the people who do that. And if you're doing that, you need an antidote to politics. And part of that antidote has probably got to be you need to check out from politics. It is the most poisoned character that cheers on destruction and says you got what you deserved. Don't be that person. And if you're trying to defend being that person, understand that you're actually part of the problem in the country right now. You're part of the problem. No one deserves the destruction. To a degree, we all do. We've all fallen. But show some mercy, exercise some grace and compassion. Love your neighbor. Let God sort it out. You can say God is sorting it out, but you got a job to love your neighbor. Don't be wishing bad things on other people. That's what people who have lost their way in the world do. And please don't lose your way. There are people suffering, struggling, dying. They've lost everything. Being a cheerleader for that destruction because these people don't share your politics makes you part of the problem. Don't be that guy, please. There's enough of that already. I need to tell you before I get out of here. So Eden Pure has asked if I wanted to tell you about another product, and I don't have a discount code for them right now. So I'm going to tell you, if you go to EdenPureDeals.com and you put in Erick3, you can get the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, but you get 3 of them, you save $200. They're an air purifier, but I have in my office, they actually emailed me yesterday. They said, hey, would you rather talk about our heater? And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I have your heater on in my office right now. So I've got one of those offices where you're not supposed to have a space heater because, they don't like it and it disappears in your office if you have a space heater. Well, I have an Eden Pure Gen 4 heater cooler, and it's a fan. It's the infrared space heater. And so it's a fan. It's an oscillating fan. It's a cooling fan. So you can't take it out of my office because it's a cooling fan. It just happens to have a little button that I know about that if I press, it heats up wonderfully. Oh my gosh, it oscillates, it tilts, it heats. I can control it with the remote control. So when they're coming down the hall, push the button and turn the heat off, and it's just a fan circulating air in the office. It's wonderful. It's the Gen 40 infrared heater, and it works so well. You can find it if you go to EdenPureDeals.com. Just put my name in, Erick, Erick. You'll see it. The Gen 40 infrared space heater. It's $247 with discount. It's great. It really does work. Also, if you put in Erick3, Erick3, you can get the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, which is the great air purifier I also use and keep in my travel bag that gets rid of pollen, dust, pet dander, odors, bacteria, viruses. It's just a great company. They got some great products. EdenPureDeals.com. Put Erick in, Erick, as your discount code, and you will see great savings on all their fine products.
When the world seems crazy, he'll keep you sane. It's
Hello and welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, text data to 33777 and get the show notes. You will thank me later. All the stuff we talk about on the show and then some. It is show prep for your mind. Y'all, I real quick. I gotta comment on this. I saw the Carter funeral. And Barack Obama sat right next to Orange Adolf Hitler and cracked jokes. They were laughing. They were chatting. They were having a good time with Kamala Harris sitting stoically in front of them. How is it that Barack Hussein Obama can have a good time with Donald Trump? I thought Donald Trump was the second coming of Hitler. Why would you laugh at one of Hitler's jokes? George W. Bush came in. I thought it was very funny. Comes in, pats Barack Obama on his stomach, kind of taps him on the stomach, and walks past. George W. Bush is going to be the most normal person to have ever been president of the United States. He's like, hey, bro, what up? Sat down next to him. It's funny. Michelle Obama, nowhere to be seen. They claim she had a scheduling conflict. She's in Hawaii. I wouldn't want to come home for her funeral anyway if I was in Hawaii, but she's in Hawaii. She probably didn't want to sit next to Donald Trump, which she would have in the order stuff. So George and Laura Bush are there. They get along with everybody. But yeah, Obama and Trump laughing it up before the funeral. How are you laugh when democracy is on the line, Barack Obama? How dare you laugh at anything Donald Trump said? When we come back, the fact checkers, Delinda Est. We need to get rid of them. Greetings, conversationalists. It's Erick Erickson here. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, it is the horrific pictures coming out of Los Angeles and Southern California. Just absolutely awful. I know a lot of people who have they're seeing destruction. They've got family and friends out there. It's just sad. Pray for these people. Goodness gracious. I gotta talk about the fact checkers a little more. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday. Nate Silver has a piece I want to get to on the fact checkers, and the Washington Free Beacon has a piece. But I want to tell you a little more expansively my issue with fact checking that involves me personally on two fronts. Because I actually think here's what happened. The press started to lose people's trust. So what the press did is they decided to start doing fact checking to try to control the narrative. It never was about telling people what was true. It was about telling people what the press wanted you to believe was true. And so they came up with fact checking, and they bullied various entities into embracing the idea that they were actually being factual, and they're not. Fact checkers sometimes can serve a purpose, but overwhelmingly the way it became for the media was a cudgel against anyone they disagreed with, and overwhelmingly it was conservatives. In fact, the data shows that when the fact checkers have to correct themselves, overwhelmingly, more than 70% of the time, when the fact checkers then have to correct their own facts, it's because they have checked a conservative and said it wasn't true, and they had to change it to it was true. They hardly ever have to correct themselves when they fact check the left. When they fact check the right, they're constantly having to correct themselves because they're a bunch of liars. Number of years ago, it was 21, 22, I can't remember now, but when I was a kid growing up overseas, we had Chinese food every Wednesday night. We had Chinese food every Wednesday night. In fact, we had Chinese food so frequently on Wednesday nights that if we had not called and put in our order, the restaurant would call us to see if we wanted our order. To this day, I cannot find fried wontons like I got in Dubai. You got to understand, the thing about Dubai was it really was the crossroads of all culture. You could get the best of any food in Dubai. And this Chinese restaurant made the best fried wontons. And I loved the fried wontons. So we would get fried wontons with the pork in the middle. My gosh, they were great. They looked like little badminton birdies. They were just perfect. We get fried wontons, sweet and sour chicken, lo mein noodles. If my dad was in town, he wanted sweet and sour shrimp. And we would get Mongolian beef every Wednesday without fail. And I mentioned this because one year, I think it must have been sixth grade, Pearl Harbor Day fell on the Wednesday that we would order it. And my mom was like, we can't get Chinese food tonight. It's Pearl Harbor Day. And we all kind of laughed because it wasn't the Chinese that bombed Pearl Harbor. It was the Japanese. And we were eating Chinese food. But my mom, she was like, no, we can't do it tonight. And it was kind of funny. And I think we wound up ordering it actually. But I mentioned it on Twitter, and it was just kind of a throwaway funny thing that happened to me as I was a kid. My mom doesn't even remember, by the way. I distinctly remember it. My mom did not remember it, but it was kind of a funny thing. So I mentioned it on Twitter. And at the time, there was that terrible publication that Hulk Hogan finally helped put out of business called Gawker. And a guy from Gawker decided to serve as fact checker. Tracked down my family to harass them. Tried to get my sister on the phone. She wouldn't take his phone call. Got my mom on the phone. My mom, of course, in her 80s, she doesn't remember something that happened in the 80s. She's 80 now. And she did make the guy stay on the phone while she told him about her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So some good came from the phone call. But Christy Teigen, that horrible woman in Hollywood, came after me as a racist for telling an innocuous story about me as a kid that somehow I was racist because when I was a kid, my mom objected to Chinese food on Pearl Harbor Day. And by the way, it was funny. We all got a laugh out of it that it was actually the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. And then this guy decided to serve as fact checker, and his story was that I had lied because my mother, who is in her 80s, has no memory of it, and therefore I was trying to vilify my parents as racists. That's what the fact-checking industry does. They're not there to be honest. They're not there for facts. They're there to wield their title as fact checker against others to attack and vilify people they don't like. They didn't like me. I had to be vilified for what should have just been a funny, lighthearted story on social media. The fact checkers are partisan progressives. Look right now at what the fact checkers are doing. The fact checkers are moving heaven and earth to try to vilify any Republican who points out that, yeah, actually, it is progressive policies in Los Angeles that have caused the problems. It is progressive policies in Los Angeles that have, in fact, caused the fire hydrants to run dry. It is the progressive policies in Los Angeles that have caused a firefighter shortage. It is the progressive policies in Los Angeles that have denied people the ability to clear the underbrush that's now all on fire. Nate Silver has a piece. You know, Nate Silver is a guy, he's a progressive, or I should say he's a liberal, but he's one of those liberals who has been driven towards moderation by the excesses of progressives. Let me read you some of this. On Tuesday, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced a series of changes to Facebook and Instagram that will considerably dial down the level of content moderation on those platforms. As someone who tries to be non-hypocritically pro-free speech, my inclination is to welcome the change. But Zuckerberg's motivations are questionable. There's no doubt Meta and other media companies are under explicit and intense political pressure from the Trump administration. Just so that this doesn't turn into a 5,000-word monster of a post, I'm going to focus solely on the first of 5 new policies Zuckerberg announced. In his own words, quote, "First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the United States." So the news is that Facebook is eliminating a partnership that began in December of 2016 with independent fact-checking organizations and replacing them with community notes. That sounds fine, actually. The fact-checking partnership was implemented during what was something of a moral panic on the left about fake news and the role it played in Trump's first election win. I've always thought this was at most a minor factor in Trump's victory over Clinton. Still, the term fake news took off after 2016, and so did the notion of perpetual round-the-clock fact-checking. Fake news waned in popularity once Trump embraced the term, but right on cue, the more scientific-sounding misinformation and disinformation displaced it. Before Trump's election, meanwhile, broader public interest in fact-checking was limited to election years. By 2017, Trump's first year in office, Google searches for fact-check were 3 times higher than 4 years before. The notion of fact-checking as a separate subfield within journalism has always been strange. Fact-checking has long been an essential part of every journalist's job, to the point it doesn't really need a name. A writer or reporter might be permitted some clunky prose or an unclear thesis in the first draft of their story, but they're expected to have every effort to get the facts right from the outset. Because organizations like factcheck.org initially especially focused on presidential election campaigns, scrutinizing claims made in speeches, ads, and debates, it made some sense for them to play a role. Following the 2016 election, though, a group of fact-checking organizations wrote an open letter to Zuckerberg to volunteer their services, claiming they had unique expertise that Facebook lacked internally to solve the scourge of fake news. What he goes on to point out here is that fact-checking is overwhelmingly coming from the left. And the journalists selected tend to be from the left. Bjorn Lomborg has noted that misinformation experts are not unbiased. Data from the Harvard Misinformation Review survey of 150 misinformation experts shows that most of them lean slightly or fairly left. There's the question of what claims are deemed to require fact-checking. Often they are the claims that are unresolvable or unresolved, matters of opinion. But the fact-checkers here tend overwhelmingly to fact-check the right, not the left, and then have to then fact-check their fact-checks. These people are partisan hacks. This is not Nate Silver, this is me. Claims of political bias are hard to refute. Bias is inherently someone in the eye of the beholder. This is Nate Silver. But to the extent fact-checkers have responded directly at all, their response has been unpersuasive, saying, quote, I don't believe we're doing anything in any form with bias. The head of the Poynter Institute says there's a mountain of what could be checked and we're grabbing what we could. No, these guys actually are biased. Here's my other fact-check story. I did the story I've talked about before about the Hunga volcano, when it exploded in January of 2023, January of 2024, there was a mountain, a copious amount of research that came out that said it was going to cause significant global warming and blow the caps off that 1.5 degree centigrade increase. Every major news outlet in the world and every scientific outlet and NASA itself said it was going to contribute to global warming. When I mentioned those articles and said so, the fact checker for the Hill, the climate fact checker, called me out and said, this isn't true. This is unsettled. We don't know. We have no idea. Everything I said was going to happen has happened, and every story at the time said it was going to happen, and the fact checker's like, we don't know. It could still be something else. Because the climate fact checker is a partisan progressive activist who needs you to be scared about climate change and not realize it was actually a natural disaster that caused the problem. When the Washington Free Beacon reported on Joe Biden's mental decline and ran a story about him getting stuff wrong on a teleprompter, the fact checkers reported them for lying to Facebook, downgraded their account. Why? Because the White House staff claimed Joe Biden had not said anything wrong. He clearly misspoke in the video. But because the White House told the fact checkers he didn't, the fact checkers said the Washington Free Beacon was wrong, and they got dinged on Facebook. The fact checkers weaponized themselves to protect Joe Biden. Time and time again, the fact checkers do. The fact checkers are a bunch of progressives whose entire job is to protect the power of progressives in Washington, D.C. The fact checkers are not fact checkers. They are protectors of progressives, and they should be destroyed and driven into the sea. The entire industry should be burned to the ground and salt spread across the land so the fact checkers can never spring up. It is not a coincidence that CNN put Daniel Dale in hibernation for the entirety of the Biden administration, and now that Trump's coming back, they've gotten him out of the carbonite and woken him back up so he can do fact checking. It is a weaponized attempt to punish any conservative who says anything, and they don't even fact check actual facts. They want to fact check opinions. They want to ridicule and belittle and censor. The fact checkers are a blight on the news media industry and have helped destroy the trust of the news media industry, which is why the news media won't get rid of them, because the news media, in their arrogance, is convinced they must destroy themselves, and they don't even realize they're doing it. Fact checkers, Delinda Est.
He's got the courage to tell you the
Welcome back. Erick Erickson here across the nation. 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. I got to play you this one weird moment that happened during Biden's press conference yesterday. And let's just be upfront here. It's just odd to do this during a press conference about the fires. Oh, where'd the audio go? Yeah, technical issue on my end. So Biden announces the birth of his great-granddaughter. He's there to talk about the disasters in California. And
good news is, great-grandfather comes up today. Granddaughter. Baby girl, baby boy. So
y'all, I just the inopportune moments here. Can I just note, though, respectfully, what is the president doing? And I'm gonna be march to the beat of my own drummer here. The president of the United States has no authority under the Constitution of the United States to deal with the fires. That's a state response. He can certainly assist with resources. I'm not really upset that he's been a no-show on this stuff. However, you know and I know that if Donald Trump was not acting hands-on, or Ron DeSantis or any other Republican, the media would be savaging them. Is it not weird, though, that not a single person in America, left, right, or center, expects Joe Biden to do anything? There literally is no expectation on Joe Biden at this point. He's got 11 days left in office. He's been, the end of his presidency came the night of the CNN debate. No one has expected anything of Joe Biden ever since. What an easy job. Just remarkable. Y'all, let me tell you something else that's remarkable. If you go to erickforhillsdale.com today, you can get one of a bunch of, they've got like 40 different courses you can take at Hillsdale College for free, complimentary. You do it at your own pace. They're video lectures from Hillsdale's professors. There's a great one on C.S. Lewis. They're a big fans of C.S. Lewis up there. They got a great one on that. The Constitution 101 one, as someone who specialized in constitutional studies in undergrad and law school, I actually found it very useful as a good reminder of things and learn some stuff I thought I knew and didn't necessarily know. You can take it for free. They've got a great one on Genesis as well. All you do is go to erickforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, erickforhillsdale.com. You sign up at erickforhillsdale.com. You do these at your own pace from Hillsdale College. They have been a remarkable institution since 1844 when they were founded. They want to show you kind of what it's like to be at Hillsdale, but also stimulate your brain. It's great mental stimulation. Go to erickforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, erickforhillsdale.com. Sign up today. They're completely free, y'all. there are two things that presidents can do. There are presidential executive actions. There are executive orders. Executive actions or executive directions are Trump directing different administrative agencies to act in certain ways and do certain things. And then there are executive orders where Trump orders certain things to happen. And oftentimes executive orders play off of prior executive orders. So let me work this out for you a little bit more expansively, just make you smarter than your neighbor. Let's go to Constitution 101. The founders divided the government into three branches. The Congress, the president, and the judiciary led by a Supreme Court. So you have the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. We oftentimes learn in school that we have three co-equal branches of government. That's not actually true. We have three branches of government that have checks and balances on each other, but they're not co-equal. And, you know, I mentioned that Hillsdale College has that Constitution 101 class. It's one of the things they get into. And it's a progressive mythology that has been created. You know, I've mentioned before norms. When people talk about Trump shattering norms, what a norm is in Washington, D.C. is something Democrats set up to protect their power. And one of the norms Democrats set up was a co-equal branches of government. But that's not true. Read the Federalist Papers. The Congress is Article 1 because it is the most powerful and the most important. You know, presidents were supposed to be magistrates. They were supposed to be chief executive officers who did what the Congress wanted them to do. You understand, please, that the first vetoes of legislation in Washington from George Washington, he vetoed the legislation that he thought was unconstitutional, not the stuff he opposed. Washington felt he had an obligation. If Congress passed a law, he had to sign it unless he thought it was unconstitutional. The role of the president has grown and Congress has shrunk, but Congress can take the power back whenever it wants. The third branch of government, the judicial branch, was considered the least powerful. Progressives in the 1900s realized, however, that if they seeded the myth of co-equal branches of government, they could make the judiciary more powerful and take power from the executive and take power from the legislative branch. And they essentially enacted a coup over time where they put power in a handful of unelected, life-tenured, black-robed masters. The reason that the media is systematically trying to undermine the Supreme Court right now is because they no longer control it. The left doesn't control it. And so the progressive press, helping the progressive left, is trying to undermine the Supreme Court. There's a story out that Sam Alito and Donald Trump talked the other day. Yeah, routine job search inquiry for a former Sam Alito law clerk. That's all it was. But if you hear the press, clearly there must be something sinister as Trump files an appeal to the Supreme Court. No, there wasn't. It's not a story. The only reason it's a story is because the press is trying to seed distrust to the Supreme Court since progressives don't control it anymore. That's all it is. Congress can reassert itself at any time, and it should. We don't have three co-equal branches of government. We have three branches of government with checks and balances on each, but the Congress is the most powerful. But there's a problem. See, the executive branch has the cabinet. And the cabinet, I mean, you got Treasury, you got state, you got defense, you got agriculture, you got interior. Well, where do you put the FCC? The Federal Communications Commission. Where do you put the Federal Trade Commission? Those aren't cabinet agencies. So where do you put them? That's become an issue for the Congress. The Congress decided to create an independent agency. So, for example, the Federal Communications Commission oversees radio and television, oversees the airwaves, things like that. So Congress started these independent regulatory agencies. The Amtrak, the Chemical Safety and Hazards Investigation Board, the Commodity Future Trading Commission, the CFTC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Export-Import Bank, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. Where do you put these agencies? Under the structure the founders came up with, you got three branches of government. You got the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. These independent agencies, where do they go? They're not presided by cabinet executives. They're not presided by the cabinet. They're not inside the executive branch of the president. They've got legislative power and their rulemaking power. So what do we do? Well, the Supreme Court years ago said it was okay, but they kind of stand on the outside. In Humphrey's Executive versus United States in 1935, the Supreme Court decided that the president had the power to hire and fire, but the president had limits on these quasi-independent agencies. It was a terrible case because the Constitution is set up for three branches of government. Over time, conservatives have been more and more inclined to realize we can't have this under the structure of the Constitution, and these entities are more or less inside the executive branch. Therefore, the president can exert more power over them. And the president of the United States, Donald Trump, intends to exert power over them through executive order and executive regulation. So, for example, the president can use executive orders for independent executive agencies. And the president has, for example, in the past, ordered cost-benefit analyses when these agencies decide to operate. These agencies can only go so far under the structure of the Constitution, and there's been a renewed willingness by the conservative majority of the Supreme Court to rein in these independent agencies, because if you look at the Constitution of the United States, you do have to ask yourself, where do they fall? There is no section of the Constitution for power to flow to entities that are not controlled by the president. I mean, this is kind of a basic thing, and I hate to harp on this too much, but you got to understand it. The independent agencies, it's like, for example, the media. This is another one of the Democratic norms, is that the Attorney General is independent. The president can't pressure the Attorney General. That's fascist nonsense. The Attorney General is an executive agent. The president is his boss. You know, the founders actually considered putting the Department of Justice inside the Article 3, inside overseen by the Supreme Court with an Attorney General appointed by the Justices of the Court. They rejected that idea. They put the Attorney General inside Article 2 and gave the president the power. That means that the Justice Department is beholden to the president. But so are all the independent agencies. Because there are three powers. There's legislative, there's executive, and there's judicial. And the president of the United States is the executive, and everyone inside the executive branch, their powers derived from the president of the United States. So Donald Trump intends to wield his power in ways prior presidents haven't necessarily wanted to do. And here's the thinking from the Trump administration coming in, is they know some progressive is going to sue anyway and get progressive judges involved. So why not go for broke? Let progressives get progressive judges to block Trump and appeal it to a Supreme Court where three of those members of the court are Trump appointees with a 6-3 majority. Might as well go for broke. One of the things that Donald Trump intends to do is reinstate Title 42. Title 42 essentially using health policy, prevented people from coming across the border, even claiming amnesty. They had to stay in Mexico. They couldn't come across the border. Guess what? There's new virus spreading out of China. Time to do Title 42 reinforcement. Also, by the way, one of the things Donald Trump wants to do is to enlist state and local law enforcement to help round up illegal aliens. Now, here's the thing. Under our constitutional system, Washington is limited. The states are plenary. What does that mean? It means that our states are semi-autonomous nations. Every state in the union is basically a nation state that has ceded limited power to Washington, D.C. That's the purpose of the federal Constitution, is to outline what limited powers Washington gets. The law enforcement power stays with the states, and it's long settled precedent that the government of the United States cannot compel local law enforcement to help the federal government. The police power belongs to the state, not the federal government. But the Immigration and Nationality Act allows state and local law enforcement to help the president of the United States. And should they choose not to, all of their federal funding goes away. The president intends to take advantage of that. And for sanctuary cities, all their funding is going to go away from the federal government if they don't help the president. With just executive action, Donald Trump can show that for the last 4 years, Joe Biden could have taken care of the problems. The other thing Donald Trump intends to do is get rid of a lot of the progressive executive orders of the Biden administration. Those include things like Title IX reform and the interpretation of gender under federal law. He's going to get rid of those very quickly. And he's probably going to go on and pardon all the people that the Biden administration arrested who were protesting at abortion clinics. The unresolved one is how many of the January 6th protesters he's going to pardon. Some of those guys were bad actors. Many of them weren't. Will he do an all or a limited approach? We don't know. But out of the gate, we do have a framework of what Donald Trump is going to do. His first executive actions and orders are going to be about immigration. And he's going to show that through executive action, Joe Biden could have this entire time solved the problem at the border without Congress ever having to act. And it will expose the lie of the Biden administration on the very first day of the Trump administration with just executive orders and executive actions. It's all he had to do, and he's going to get it done. Now, let me tell you about Old Glory Bank before I get out of here. The banking sector, by the way, is another one that Donald Trump intends to restrict the ability of federally chartered banks from closing bank accounts. Old Glory Bank exists for that reason, because so many conservatives have in the last 4 years, under pressure from the left, seen banks close their bank accounts. Particularly, this has been a backdoor way for gun control for the left. They've gone to banks around the country and said, hey, this company you're doing business with runs a gun range or is a gun shop or a gun manufacturer. You should stop banking with them. And a lot of banks shut down their banking with gun manufacturers, gun ranges, and things like that. That's why Old Glory Bank was started, to protect the Second Amendment right, to protect conservatives. They're by conservatives, for conservatives. They'd love to have your business. They got my business well before they started advertising with me. All you have to do is go to oldglorybank.com. You can sign up online. It takes about 6 minutes online. Fill out the form online. You get a bank account. I've got a no-fee checking. I've got a no-fee savings account. They're great. Their app is good. Their debit card is good. They do mortgages. If you're looking for a mortgage, they've got great rates. Home equity lines of credit, car loans. They do CDs. Businesses, if you move your business to Old Glory Bank, they've got great business advisors for capital allocation. So reach out to Old Glory Bank. You can fill out your account online at oldglorybank.com. That's oldglorybank.com. Oldglorybank.com. It really is my bank. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply.
You can follow Eric around on social media at EW Erickson on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
I'm going to defend Michelle Obama. Yeah, brace yourselves. Michelle Obama is being attacked by some conservatives for not going to Jimmy Carter's funeral. Why? Why? She's in Hawaii. I wouldn't want to give up Hawaii to go to the snow in Washington, D.C. She didn't ask to be First Lady of the United States. She just happened to be because her husband became president. No, I'm not going to attack Michelle Obama. I wouldn't want to go to Jimmy Carter's funeral anyway. She didn't care for the man. Why does she have to go pretend that she did? The presidents, they signed up for the job. The first ladies didn't. I'm sorry. There are too many things in the world to get worked up about, other than Michelle Obama not going to the funeral of a man she didn't particularly even know or care for. So why? Don't give up your holiday, Michelle. You do your own thing. Live your best life now. Just, I don't know, y'all. There's too many other things out there. By the way, there is some breaking news that I should tell you about. My buddy Greg Scott actually sent me this. Greg is with the Alliance Defending Freedom. A federal court in Kentucky has issued a decision in state of Tennessee versus Cardona. It blocks the Biden administration's unlawful redefinition of sex in Title IX nationwide. The court ruled, quote, when Title IX is viewed in its entirety, it is abundantly clear that discrimination on the basis of sex means discrimination on the basis of being a male or female. That is a very big win. The Supreme Court could actually weigh in on this issue, but that's a huge win. The Biden administration radically tried to redefine Title IX to make it about trans rights. And it's not a circuit court, it's a district court in Kentucky has shot them down and said, nope, that's a great case. You know, one of the things the Democrats have tried to do is pack as many progressives in the courts of America as possible. But there's a problem. When Trump was president his first term, he rushed to fill as many circuit court jobs. The circuit courts are all kind of mini Supreme Courts. They get to decide stuff that affect multiple states, and only when the circuit courts disagree does the Supreme Court really take the appeal. So the Biden administration, they can load up these district courts with a bunch of progressives, but then they're going to go to these mini Supreme Courts, the circuit courts of appeal, most of which now are controlled by conservatives. There are going to be more openings coming up, Trump, his second term, and he can rush through the appointment of more conservatives in the next 2 years. I hope he's got Leonard Leo in there advising him from the Federalist Society. Get as many conservatives back in there. It's time to get that sort of stuff done. But the courts right now are really on the side of conservatives, which is why the left is so eager to try to discredit the Supreme Court and all the other conservative courts in the nation. They're worried about. When we come back, we got to switch gears. I'll take your phone calls, 877-973-7425. But also, we got to talk about the free market just a little bit, because there are some people whispering in Trump's ear who essentially want to do what the left has done. And it would be a terrible idea for all of us if the Trump administration goes in the direction of having a little Politburo of populists trying to shape economic policy in this country. I'll explain it to you when we get back. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the nation. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, if you text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you too can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, and so much more that's out there and available. Follow me on Instagram at EW Erickson. I'm everywhere at EW Erickson, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, EWERICKSON. But Instagram's where you want to follow me. I'm at my nicest there. Let me bring you guys up to speed real quick on something that I want you to know about. So I mentioned, and I think I'm going to be able to work it out with the Fox Theater in Atlanta, which is a great venue. If not, a couple other groups have stepped forward offering their space. I'm trying to work it out of the Fox just because it's a cool place. My 50th birthday party is going to be in June. A buddy of mine mentioned to me a year or so ago what I should do. I've got a bunch of stories I can't tell the radio for two reasons. One is some of them involve language, and you can't say it on the radio, but you have to. You just it's part of the story. The other is, my parents listen all the time, and there are some stories I shouldn't share in front of my parents. So, what I decided is, there are things you can tell your friends that you don't want your parents to necessarily know. But so I'm going to find a venue for later this year, and I am going to stand on a stage, and I am going to share all of these stories that are not safe for radio. And I will keep your ears out for this. It'll be in Atlanta. It'll be a fun time. And I've decided there is a couple of nonprofits that I have really wanted to help and find a way to creatively help. One of which is my kids' school. And the other reason I want to do it at the Fox is because the Fox also has a great nonprofit I've been wanting to do something with. So I raised some money for my kids' school and just have a good time with listeners who become friends. Have a lot of people I want to invite, sell some tickets. It'll be fun. Boy, do I have stories. The hard part is I want to make sure Philip and Charlie can come, and they've heard some of these stories. So I got to find the stories that they haven't heard so that they won't be bored out of their minds. We'll make it happen. I'll keep you posted. I decided to pull the trigger on it. But nobody ever throws me a birthday party. I'm going to throw myself one. Now, we must move on. This sounds a little out of place, and it's not. Trust me. I have been aware for some time that there are a group of people, they're not really on the right, but they have begun to adopt the rhetoric of MAGA to infiltrate. And I need you to know something. Let's just be fully transparent. I got a lot of new listeners here, so I'll lay all my cards on the table. I supported Donald Trump. I gave him a lot of money in 2024. I'm not a fan, personally. He's not my favorite president. Ronald Reagan is. Calvin Coolidge, really, if we want to go back. Coolidge was better than Reagan, but I digress. But the difference between Trump and Harris is night and day. His policies are so much better. But I don't pretend to be a diehard Trump supporter. I never will pretend to be. You'd be amazed at the number of people who attack me these days as having gone MAGA. I'm like, you clearly don't listen to me. I'm willing to criticize the man. He's not my favorite guy. There are many things he does I disagree with, and I'm willing to say so. But I'm also willing to say him versus the alternative. He's far better. But one of the most infuriating things to me, and what I find deeply intellectually dishonest, is the people who can't stand Donald Trump, but have pretended to do so that they can try to ingratiate themselves and get into his circle and shape some level of policy in a way that would be bad. We've begun to see, for example, divisions of people. Take like Vivek Ramaswamy. Many of you like him. Vivek Ramaswamy spent a large number of years attacking Donald Trump, criticizing Donald Trump, criticizing everything Donald Trump stood for, and then suddenly last year decided to embrace all the talking points and run. And now suddenly, now that Trump is elected, he's gotten very close to Trump, and he's like, hey, we need to save the H-1B visa program. The problem with America is your culture sucks, and you need to be more like other people. It's like it was a deeply offensive series of tweets that he wrote that showed a level of cluelessness and biasness that showed he wanted to all the gains that MAGA wants to make. He wants to be someone who subverts those gains, and he's just been a poser. Many people still like him though, but there are lots of others as well. And I get so frustrated with the people who pretend to be something they're not, trying to ingratiate themselves. Just be who you are. Let the chips fall where they're going to fall. And you'll they're either going to like you or not. But to change your entire personality and everything you believe to try to get a seat at the table just grosses me out. I don't intend to do that. One of the problems where the rubber meets the road on this on policy is economics. And you got a bunch of people who don't believe in the free market, who are trying to convince Donald Trump to establish some level of populist Politburo. Now, what's Politburo? The way communist societies are organized. Communist societies, we're not talking a mainline communism, not Trotskyitism. Mainline communist societies, they have a central committee of communists. So why are the communists sole parties? In communist countries, communists believe that they are the vanguard of the people. They're the leaders of the people, and that they voice the voices of the working class. You know who the bad guys are in a communist society? The middle class, not the rich, the middle class. The middle class, the bourgeois. It's not the rich who are the problem in a communist society. One, because people never get rich. It's the middle class, because the middle class, they're the shopkeepers. They're the small businesses. And in every society, including our own, it's small businesses disproportionately impact the economy because that's where most people work. Most people don't work for a Fortune 500 company. They work for a small business. And so the middle class were the bad guys. The working class, they were the vanguard of the revolution. And the working class would appoint the Central Committee. The Central Committee would appoint a Politburo. The Politburo would appoint a General Secretary, and the General Secretary served as the dictator, with the Politburo carrying out public policy. In theory and on paper, the Politburo was accountable to the Central Committee. In reality and in practice, the Politburo reigned supreme, and the Central Committee lived in fear of the Politburo. That's the way it works in China today. That's the way it works in North Korea. That's the way it works in Cuba. That's the way it worked in the Soviet Union. And the Politburo's number one job was to set economic policy, all the other policies too, but mainly economic policy. And the Politburo decided in economic policy, it knew what was best for the people, because what was the Politburo? The vanguard of the working class. And the working class knew best. In September of 1989, 1990, Boris Yeltsin abandoned the Communist Party. Do you know why? True story, by the way. True story. Boris Yeltsin went to Texas to see NASA. He was on tour. Boris Yeltsin, then a prominent politician in the Soviet Union. Before the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was coming. I knew it was coming. Yeltsin was trying to get to know the Americans. He came to tour NASA. Touring NASA did not get Boris Yeltsin to reject the Communist Party. You know what did? An American grocery store. Yeltsin had never seen something like that. In fact, at first, Yeltsin believed that what he was seeing had been staged. He had to be convinced it wasn't so, and the way to convince him was to take him to another grocery store. And then Yeltsin went to Florida. He went from Houston to Florida to Cape Canaveral, and he stopped at another grocery store. And everywhere he went, there was plenty. There was choice. Think about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has more than once complained about the number of options you have for deodorant and toothpaste in this country. Boris Yeltsin saw the deodorant and toothpaste selections in the United States and abandoned communism and thought, what have we done to our people? The Politburo had constrained supply. The Politburo thought it knew better than the free market. And that's my problem with some of these people surrounding Donald Trump have decided he needs a Politburo, just like the progressives want a Politburo. The Democrats love to have experts who set economic policy because they've decided they know best. Y'all, have you seen the experts in this country in the last 20 years? They don't know anything. Do you know what the free market is? The real free market? We don't even really have the free market right now in this country under Joe Biden. We have corporatism. In corporatism, it is whatever is good for the corporation is what the government decides we need to do. So that corporations never have to risk going bankrupt, because in a free market, a corporation could go bankrupt because the David slays Goliath and takes advantage of the creative destructive forces of the free market. Corporatism restrains the free market. We need the free market. We've had the free market in this country. We could go back to the free market in this country. It'd be very easy to do. But the one thing we can't do to get there is to establish a populist Politburo that decides it can set economic policy. Because I got to tell you, the populist experts are no smarter than the progressive experts, and together the experts are not as smart as the American people in an arm's length transaction. What the free market actually is Americans in free market transactions, arm's length transactions, one to another, engaging with each other in contracts to buy and to sell, and they bring about efficiencies. Free markets are good. You know what's best for your family, not the Politburo of Washington, D.C. You, a small business owner, know what's best for your business, not the Politburo of Washington, D.C. You know what's best for your family. You know what's best for your kids' education. You know what's best for your small business. You know what's best for your job, not some expert far away in Washington, D.C. The reason I'm a conservative is because I'm a Christian. And as a Christian, I know that we are all sinners. And so I want as few in charge of me as possible. And the way to put as few in charge of me as possible is to let the free market work. And yet we have a bunch of people who've decided that they want to set economic policy. They want to be the ones in charge. It's all about power. The populists are no better than the progressives when they decide they know best, because they don't know best. I'm old enough to know I do not know what's best for your life. And it's remarkable, after we've gone through the failures of COVID, the failures of foreign policy experts, the failures of the Biden economic experts, the failures of the technical experts, for all these people to try to ingratiate with Donald Trump and say, hey, Donald Trump, we'll be your experts. And I pray that the president-elect realizes these people are trying to play him, and that he decides to put his trust in the American people who can operate in a free market. It is time we see some major businesses in this country go bankrupt. It is. The government has been bailing them out and protecting them. The government has been picking winners and losers. And the progressives and the populists together in their little Politburos are not as smart as the American people. We need not just to defend the free market, defend it, we need to bring it back. We need to be more open to allowing the free marketplace to operate, because here's the thing we also know. In every situation, when you have government control versus a free market, people do better in a free market. Things are cheaper and things are plentiful. When the Politburos get involved, you increase scarcity, you decrease value, you decrease efficiencies, and you ruin the lives of the people. You look at China, look at North Korea, look at Cuba, look at Venezuela, look at the Soviet Union, look at California, look at these progressive states who've relied on experts. Stop trying to rely on experts and unleash the free market.
He'll do the research and give it to you straight. Erick Erickson is live every weekday.
Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson. The phone number 877-973-7425. You know, the left is furious with people like me for pointing out progressive policies in California have led this. You're not allowed to talk about policy failures on the left. You know what you can talk about, though? Of course, global warming. Over to you, MSNBC.
Of the fire response to this. The appropriations measures that will come in probably in the next 90 days will fund a lot of the displacement costs for individuals. It will reimburse municipalities and public authorities for the work. But at the end of the day, if you either can't afford to rebuild or can't afford to insure your property, that's where we're ignoring one of the great problems we have. We don't do enough to prevent the change of climate science or change of climate or address climate science, but we also are ignoring the fact that we have this significant risk peril in communities across the country. And the government either is going to help subsidize paying for that risk on the front end or is going to have to bail it out on the back end. Bailing it out is always more expensive and less responsible.
Climate change, that's right. Climate change. So it's global warming now. It's easy for the progressives to say climate change, climate change, climate change, but you know the climate's been changing. Had they cut down the bushes that were going to catch on fire, they could have. Had they built more reservoirs, they would have the money, they would have the water to put out the fires. But they didn't do any of that stuff. Here's the thing: I get attacked regularly for saying this, but it's the God's honest truth. We have to adapt to the world. We are the most adaptable species. You know, they make a big deal about all the flooding in Miami because of the rising water. It's actually the buildings are sinking. The buildings sink something like a centimeter a year. The buildings are sinking. It's not that the water is rising, it's that the buildings are sinking. We got to be able to adapt. We got to be able to deal with that. We got to find solutions to that. They could have built more reservoirs, but environmentalists blocked them from building more reservoirs. They didn't want to build the reservoirs. They could have. They chose not to. It's just absurd to me that these people don't want to adapt, but they want to scream about climate change. Deal with it by adapting to it. Now, you've got to adapt to the landscape that's out there economically right now because we don't know if tariffs are coming or not. And if they do, your computer prices are going to go up. And if you need to invest in technology right now, it's the time to do it. You can do it with Vision Computer. All you got to do is call them at 404-COMPUTE, 404-COMPUTE, or go to visioncomputer.com. Tell them I sent you. You're going to save some money. And listen, they can go on and protect you from the tariffs that might be coming by baking in the cost now. A great thing to do if you need a new computer, but then also you get their 5-star service where you get a phone number and you get a special phone number. And when you call them, 15 seconds or less, you get the answer to your question, what's going on with your computer. They can remote in even and take care of you. They can help you. And when you buy a new computer from them, they'll take your old computer and transfer everything to the new computer. So the new computer is set up just like you already know, except it's newer, better, faster. 404-COMPUTE. Call them and tell them I sent you. Save some money. Anybody nationwide can do it. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Glad to have you with me. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. While all the fire stuff is happening out there, we got to talk a little bit about the immigration situation as well, because the media, which cared nothing about the issue for 4 years, suddenly cares very much that it might cost a lot of money to get illegal aliens out of the country, among other things. I want to play for you a couple of things. MSNBC, of course it was MSNBC, had a conversation with the director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Let you listen to some of this.
A lot of that came down. Those numbers drastically fell, especially starting in June when the new executive action went into place. Do you think that Biden should have taken that action earlier?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely, yes, he should have. The administration should have taken that action earlier, and I think career people in DHS would have liked that, and all of us in DHS, quite frankly. I don't know if anybody in DHS wouldn't have wanted that earlier. Maybe there's some counselors here or there that don't like this kind of stuff, but law enforcement is always going to be on that side where we want, some tighter controls. Because for a while there, you remember, it was 10,000 plus.
Biden had an exit interview this week where he was asked about his regrets, and he did not mention the border. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but it's unfortunate because I think we could have done more.
What specifically?
We could have put more resources to it, either CBP and for the border itself and with ICE. And we could have went and tried to get more of these individuals who are on the non-detained docket. And we could have detained more people, and we could have removed more people. And I think we could use more resources and support. We could have done that in the last, 4 years.
Really? That's Joe Biden's, not Donald Trump's director of Immigration Customs Enforcement. That's Joe Biden's guy. A little more. Just listen. One more little clip here.
Is it possible to increase your number of deportations under your current resources?
Under our current resources, no. Because we're basically we're burnt, like I mentioned before, we're burning hot. We're at maximum resource capacity. At this point, we're going to need more money and resources to increase. And with more money and resources, we can increase detention. We can increase removal operations. Listen, there's still a whole immigration process, so people have to go through and you go through and get some benefit that comes out of it, and asylum, you name it, or you're ordered to remove, and as you go through the immigration proceedings and go through there. But with more resources, with more money, we can do more.
More resources, more money, we can do more. That's what he says. Is it not wild that MSNBC is here now at this time asking these questions? They could have raised this issue the whole time. They didn't until now. One more little clip here. Listen to this a little bit from the same reporter asking the questions. Listen to this a little bit.
This reporting shows that they can't only arrest the people who are the biggest threats. If they're looking at workplace raids, for example, most of the people who would be working in those places wouldn't be these hardened criminals that they want to go after. And if they're going to do a big sweep like that, of course they're going to be picking up people who have committed no other crime other than being in this country and working here without authorization.
No other crime other than that. Well, I mean, if they've been here under the Biden administration, maybe they need to go home. Can I just, this is going to make a lot of you mad, and I don't mean to make you mad. Particularly, I got a lot of new listeners. I'm trying to suck up to you. But if I were in charge of this, if I were king for a day, I would concurrently do two things. We have a list of the people that we know have come into the country, that were processed and set free into this country, and we know by now the bad ones. Focus on finding those, and while you're focusing on finding the gang members and the criminals, build an actual physical Great Wall of the United States. Build a gigantic wall at the southern border. And when the farmers complain and say, we got to have access to the Rio Grande, say, I'm sorry, national security. Find a way to accommodate them if you can, but build a physical wall, not the iron rebar crap that we're putting up right now. Build a giant wall, a big brick wall with spikes on the top, and electrify it and stick it out about a mile into the Atlantic and a mile into, or the Gulf of Mexico, and a mile into the Pacific, so people can't walk around it at the ocean side. Giant physical wall. If you want, invade northern Mexico, get on the other side of the Rio Grande and build it there. I don't care. Build a giant wall and stick giant rebar sensors down under the ground about 100 feet. So if they try to tunnel under it, we know and we can crush the tunnel. So build a physical big wall. At the same time, you're rounding up all the bad guys, the people who have already been ordered to deport who haven't, the people who we know are gang members and have criminal records, find them. Do all that. Once you've gotten rid of the gangbangers and the drug dealers and the violent criminals and the people who've already been ordered to get out and have it, and you got a physical wall so no one else can come in, my suspicion is that the overwhelming majority, not all Americans, there will always be some, but the overwhelming majority of Americans are going to say, you know what? We really do not care about the grandmother who's been here since the 1980s. Who her only crime was in the 1980s, she came here illegally. We don't really care about her. She can never get citizenship, but she doesn't have to keep looking over her shoulder anymore to see if she's going to be deported. And you dreamers who came here as toddlers, you can never get citizenship unless you join the military. Serve this country that you claim is your country, even though you're not a citizen. We'll give you the citizenship. Otherwise, we're going to let you stay, but you're never going to be a citizen. You too. We will make you resident aliens. You don't have to leave. You've been here since you were 1. Your parents carried you across the border. Y'all can stay, but you can never vote. We'll put in the law that you can't vote unless you're an American citizen. We'll make it real clear down to local election level. You can't vote unless you're an American citizen. But here's the other thing, what you got to do, and we'll have to be careful how we do it because of document forging. If you've come here while Joe Biden was president, if you've been here in the last 4 years, we don't care who you are. We don't care that you're 90 years old. We don't care that you're 5 years old. You're leaving. You see, I think there's a difference between the people who've taken advantage of Joe Biden's presidency to come here and the people who came here in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s they've been here, their kids were born here, they got kids who are American citizens, or they've got kids who came here when they were 2 years old and now they're 20 years old and they don't know any other place that's home. We'll say you can never be an American citizen. That's your punishment. You can never actually be a citizen, but you can stop looking over your shoulder thinking you're going to be deported. We don't care about you. What we care about is get rid of the gangbangers, get rid of the violent criminals, get rid of the murderers, get rid of the people we've already told to go home that just haven't done it yet, get rid of all them. Now we've got a physical border wall, so we're not going to have to worry about this in the future. And the rest of you who've been here for a long time, you've committed to this country, we'll commit to you, but only so far because you can't be a citizen. And if you really want to prove you're desperate to be a citizen, because I think most of them really don't care, if you really want to prove it, well, the Marines could use a few good men. By the way, war might be coming with China, so sign up now. But that's me. That's my. Now, I have friends who are hardliners on the issue and say, no, I don't care that grandmother's been here for 40 years and is now in her 80s. She came here illegally. Round her up and get her butt back. That's not me. I'm not that hardline on the position. But my personal view, and I could be wrong, but my personal sense of things from talking to a lot of people, including a lot of you, is that if we build a big, beautiful physical wall and we get rid of all the people who've come here in the past 4 years, and I don't, by the way, I want to be real clear here. I don't care whether you mean no harm or not. If you've come here while Joe Biden was president, get out. You've taken advantage of it. You've overwhelmed the border. You need to leave. You haven't had time to lay down roots, unlike grandma who came here in the 80s. Get out. Go to your local American embassy, fill out a form. Maybe you can come. I actually think I would reinstate the program we had before Lyndon Johnson got rid of it, the seasonal migration program that we had then, that you just come across the border, you sign up, do all that sort of stuff. You leave, you come for 6 months, you leave for 6 months. I think that's fine. But I just think the people who are here immediately, they got to go. Good, the bad, the indifferent, they got to leave. And we should, as a society, be willing to differentiate between the person who came 40 years ago, they've now laid down roots in this country, and we're going to say, stop worrying, we don't care about you. And the person who came yesterday is looking over his shoulder, we do care about you, we want you gone. And I don't think we can have a reasonable conversation about it at all, ever. I do not think we can reasonably engage in this topic until we have a wall so that we don't have to worry about this again. Because otherwise, every 30 years, we have this problem. Ronald Reagan had to deal with the problem. He cut an amnesty deal in the 1980s. And we were assured then that we would secure the border thereafter. We never did. But the idea that we can't round these people up and throw them out because of the cost is nonsense. It's fear-mongering. It's baloney. Round them up. Find them. Hunt them. Deport them. It's not a matter of compassion. I love my neighbor. The Bible tells me to love my neighbor. And my neighbor is the homeless American who can't find housing because of this wave of illegal immigrants that have come over in the last 4 years. My neighbor is the poor American in Springfield, Ohio, who can't get into public health because the illegal immigrants have overwhelmed the public health system. My neighbor is the immigrant who came here legally, who did everything they could to get here because they wanted the American dream, and they got here. And now they're seeing all these people jump the line, ignore the law, and demand to be let in. I love my neighbor, which is why I want a secure border. By the way, one other thing. If I were king for a day, and I encourage the American Congress to do this, prohibit illegal immigrants from being counted in the census. Because the whole reason Democrats have turned a blind eye to this is they're trying to prop up their numbers in the next census. You know, right now under current law, everyone is counted in the census, legal and illegal. And so Democrats can shape the Electoral College and their numbers in the United States House by piling illegal immigrants into California, New York, and Illinois. Prohibit it. Say, no way. Can't do it. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems we have. But unless we're willing to build a wall, I fully support a big wall. Unless we're willing to do it, we're going to be dealing with this issue again in 20 years. So build the wall, get rid of the gangbangers and the drug dealers and all the people who Joe Biden let into the country. And once we've done that, I think we can have a different, rational conversation about the people who've been here illegally for 30 years and the dreamers. We got ways to deal with them, but we got to get rid of all the current people first. Now, with all the banking situation out there and the bank collapses and stuff, Swiss America wants to help you protect your hard-earned assets. They've been the trustless leader in precious metals for 40 years in this country. And they've been warning people about a secret war on cash. I suspect you're interested in this, particularly if you're into crypto. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They've been educating people on how to protect their assets, and their report can help you. It takes less than 15 minutes to read this report. All you do to get a free copy of it is call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. The government is trying to track your purchases you think are anonymous because you're using cash or crypto, and they found ways to do it. Swiss America can educate you on this. Get their free report. Call or text my name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. All you got to do is mention my name, Erick, when you call or text. E-R-I-C-K, 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply.
Well connected and well respected. Trusted. It's Erick Erickson live every weekday.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. I had a friend of mine ping me. He said he's not 100% sure we can avoid counting illegal immigrants without changing the Constitution because the way the census provision is worded. I don't know, but I certainly think it should be researched. I just think it's a terrible idea to count people who aren't supposed to be here as part of the census. Now, I gotta, before I get out of here, bring you up to speed on the fire because it's not slowing down. The Los Angeles County Police Department fire department is saying in certain areas of the city now, particularly in Palisades, that they are out of water. The reservoirs are dry. It is horrific that a city by the sea, they have been able to get some planes in the air that can scoop water up out of the ocean and drop it, and they're doing that. The Canadians, Justin Trudeau, he's got a black eye from Trump, being bullied by Trump. He's trying to make a big deal with Gavin Newsom that he's helping the Californians. And, of course, the media has seized on this as some sort of FU to Donald Trump, which I think is kind of ridiculous that they're playing it up that way. Everything's got to be about Trump. Before this is over, they're going to find a way to blame Donald Trump. In fact, they're already trying, claiming that Donald Trump, if he gets elected, has said he's going to cut fire safety funds. No, actually, that's not what Donald Trump said. What Donald Trump said is that he's going to cut fire funds in areas of the country that do not do robust fire prevention, like, for example, forest management. But this is a bad situation. And there are new fires breaking out. The winds are so high there. One of the problems is the winds are so high in Los Angeles right now. They're starting to settle down, thank goodness. But they pick up the glowing embers and drop the embers, and the embers then miles away set new fires. It's just awful to see. These people need a lot of prayer. And by the way, if I could encourage you, the Salvation Army and Samaritan's Purse are two great nonprofits that do a lot of great work. I actually like both of them more than the Red Cross because your money actually goes to the charity, not to overhead, with Samaritan's Purse and with the Salvation Army. With the Red Cross, a lot of your money goes to overhead, and I don't like that. Even though the Red Cross has the big name, the Salvation Army and Samaritan's Purse, great organizations that will be on the ground helping these people. They're going to need a lot of help. And I continue to be really just roll my eyes at the number of people who are, I don't know. They're so broken by partisanship. They can't see that this is not a time for mock the people for the consequence of their votes, but help the people and maybe minister to them. These people are hurting. They've lost everything. More people are going to lose lives. I don't know. Look, I mean, I started my show today with the progressive policies that led to this. And it's true. Progressive policies led to this. But you still got to love your neighbor. So you can point out the policies that led to it, and you don't have to rub their nose in it right now. They're hurting. Right now, love them, hug them, pray for them, and help them if you can. And a lot more fires are going to happen in the next few days as they struggle because they're out of water and need rain. Pray for rain, if nothing else. You guys, I will talk to you all tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. Those of you in the South, keep your eye on the weather because it's changing rapidly for the worse.